The wedding dress felt like a shroud. Jessica Ade stood at the altar in borrowed white silk, her dark skin glowing against the fabric, her hands trembling as she clutched a bouquet of wilting roses. The church was packed with strangers, people her fiancé had insisted on inviting, people whose names she didn't know and whose eyes felt like judgment. The organ played the processional for the third time, and still Daniel hadn't arrived. The whispers started small, a ripple through the pews that grew into waves of speculation and pity. Jessica's chest tightened with each passing second, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She had given up everything for this moment, left her family in Lagos, moved to Seoul with nothing but hope and love for a man who promised her forever. And now, standing alone at the altar with mascara beginning to streak down her cheeks, she realized forever had an expiration date she hadn't been told about. That's when the doors burst open, not with her missing groom, but with something far more dangerous. Kang Min-ho entered like a storm made flesh, 6 feet of controlled violence in a black suit that cost more than most people's cars, his dark eyes scanning the room with predatory precision before landing on her. And in that moment, something ancient and possessive roared to life inside him, something that whispered mine with such absolute certainty that his entire world tilted on its axis. Welcome to K-fairytales stories, besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. Jessica's legs nearly gave out when she saw him approaching. Kang Min-ho was legend in Seoul's underground, the kind of man mothers warned their daughters about, the kind of power that moved through shadows and left bodies in its wake. She'd seen him once before, 3 months ago at a charity gala Daniel had dragged her to, and the way his eyes had followed her across the room had made her skin burn and her pulse race in ways that terrified her. He'd looked at her like he was memorizing her, like he was already planning ways to possess her, and she'd spent the entire evening pretending she didn't notice while feeling his gaze like a physical touch. Now he was walking down the aisle toward her, and every person in that church held their breath. The priest stumbled backward. The guests shifted nervously, and Jessica stood frozen, caught between humiliation and something that felt dangerously like hope. He stopped directly in front of her, so close she could smell his cologne, expensive and dark and completely overwhelming. His hand lifted to her face, thumb brushing away a tear with devastating gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him. "Your groom isn't coming." His voice was deep, accented, absolute. "He left you here to be humiliated in front of all these people." Jessica's throat closed. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare up at this terrifying man who was touching her face like she was something precious. "I know," she finally whispered. Min-ho's jaw tightened, something violent flickering in his eyes before he controlled it. "Then you have a choice. You can walk out of here alone, or you can leave with me. Either way, that man doesn't deserve you. He doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as you." The words should have scared her. Instead, they made something inside her chest crack open, made her want things she had no right wanting from a man like him. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying if he's fool enough to abandon you, then I'm taking what he threw away." His hand slid from her face to her hand, his fingers lacing with hers with shocking intimacy. "I'm saying you're mine now, Jessica Ade. And I don't let go of what belongs to me." Church erupted in chaos. People gasped, someone screamed, the priest started stammering about sacred vows and proper procedures. But Min-ho ignored all of it, his entire focus on Jessica like she was the only person in the world who mattered. "Say yes." His voice dropped lower, became almost pleading beneath the command. "Say yes and I'll give you everything he promised and more. I'll worship you the way you deserve. I'll burn down anyone who tries to hurt you. Just say yes." Jessica knew this was insane. Knew accepting would mean stepping into a world of violence and danger, knew this man was everything she should run from. But standing there in her wedding dress, abandoned and humiliated, with Min-ho looking at her like she was salvation itself, she found herself nodding. "Yes," she heard herself whisper. "Yes." The word had barely left her lips when Min-ho swept her into his arms, lifting her effortlessly despite the layers of silk and tulle. The bouquet fell from her hands, roses scattering across the marble floor as he carried her down the aisle. His men materialized from nowhere, forming a protective wall around them as they exited the church into the bright Seoul afternoon. A black Mercedes waited at the curb, door already open, and Min-ho placed her inside with surprising care before sliding in beside her. The door closed, sealing them in leather and silence. Jessica's heart hammered as the car pulled away from the church, from her failed wedding, from the life she'd planned. What just happened? Minho's hand found hers again, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm that made her shiver. I claimed you. In front of everyone who matters in Seoul, I made you mine. His eyes met hers, dark and intense and absolutely certain. No one will question it. No one will dare. But I don't even know you. You know I'm dangerous. You know I'm powerful. You know I want you more than I've ever wanted anything. His hand tightened on hers. That's enough to start. Jessica should have been terrified, should have demanded he take her home, should have run the moment they stopped at a traffic light. Instead, she found herself leaning closer, drawn by the heat radiating from him, by the way he looked at her like she was something rare and precious. Why? The question came out barely above a whisper. Why did you do this? Minho was quiet for a long moment, his gaze intense enough to burn. 3 months ago, I saw you at a gala. You were wearing gold, laughing at something your fiancé said, and I felt something I'd never felt before. Like my chest was cracking open. Like I'd been walking through life half asleep and you woke me up. He paused, jaw tight. I had you investigated that night. Found out everything about you. Your family in Lagos, your design degree, how you gave up your job to move here for a man who didn't appreciate what he had. I've been watching you ever since, waiting for him to make the mistake I knew he'd make. And when he left you at that altar today, I knew fate was giving me exactly one chance to make you mine. The confession should have terrified her. Instead, it made her pulse race, made her skin flush hot. You've been watching me for 3 months? Every day. His honesty was brutal. I know you sketch in the park on Tuesdays. I know you prefer tea to coffee but add too much honey. I know you cry sometimes late at night when you think no one can hear, and I've wanted to break down your door every single time to find out what makes you sad so I can destroy it. Jessica's breath caught. That's stalking. That's obsession, he corrected, his hand sliding up her arm in a touch that made her shiver. That's what happens when a man like me sees something he needs to survive. And I need you, Jessica. I've needed you since the moment I saw you. The car pulled up to a building in Gangnam, all glass and steel and obvious wealth. Minho's building, she realized. His territory. He helped her from the car, his hand on her lower back possessive and warm, and guided her through a private entrance to an elevator that required a keycard. The penthouse was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul, minimalist furniture that screamed expensive taste, art on the walls that belonged in museums. But Jessica barely noticed, too aware of Minho behind her, too conscious of how alone they were, too overwhelmed by everything that had happened in the last hour. I should call my family. Minho moved to the bar, poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Tell them what? That your fiancé abandoned you, or that I claimed you. Both, she said, accepting the glass with shaking hands. Neither, I don't know, drink. His voice was gentle but firm. Then we'll figure out what comes next. Jessica drank, the whiskey burning down her throat, warming her from the inside. What does come next? I assume you don't actually expect me to just move in here and play house with a mafia boss I barely know. Minho's smile was sharp. I expect you to let me take care of you. I expect you to accept that you're under my protection now. And I expect you to stop fighting what's between us. There's nothing between us except your obsession. Liar. He crossed to her in 2 strides, backing her against the window, his hands framing her face. You felt it 3 months ago at that gala. I saw the way you looked at me when you thought no one was watching. I saw the way your breath changed when I got close. You've been as aware of me as I've been of you, you're just too stubborn to admit it. Jessica's pulse raced, her skin heating everywhere he touched. Even if that were true, I was engaged. Now you're not. His thumb traced her bottom lip, his eyes following the movement with an intensity that made her knees weak. Now you're mine, and I'm going to spend every day proving you made the right choice. This is insane, probably, but I've never been more certain of anything. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her lips. Tell me to stop, Jessica. Tell me you don't want this, and I'll take you anywhere you want to go. I'll make sure you're safe and provided for and never have to see me again. But if you don't tell me to stop, I'm going to kiss you, and once I start, I won't be able to pretend I don't need you anymore. Jessica knew she should stop this, should push him away and demand he take her home, should do anything except what she did, which was close the distance between them and press her lips to his. Minho made a sound low in his chest, something between a growl and a groan, and then he was kissing her back with a hunger that stole her breath. His hands tangled in her hair, careful of the pins and veil, and his mouth moved over hers like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. The kiss was everything Daniel's had never been, consuming and desperate, and so intense it made her dizzy. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min-ho rested his forehead against hers. "Mine," he whispered, the word fierce and possessive. "Say it. Say you're mine. I don't know what I am," she admitted, her hands fisted in his shirt. "But I'm here. That's enough." He kissed her again, softer this time. "For now, that's enough." The next morning, Jessica woke in a guest room she barely remembered being led to, still wearing her wedding dress, her makeup smeared and her hair a mess. Sunlight streamed through windows she hadn't closed, and for a moment she thought yesterday had been a dream. Then she heard voices from the other room, Min-ho's voice low and commanding, speaking rapid Korean to someone. Reality crashed back. She'd left her wedding with a Mafia boss. She'd kissed him. She'd agreed to stay with him. She was officially insane. Jessica found a bathroom attached to the guest room, stripped out of the wedding dress with shaking hands, and stood under the shower until the water ran cold. When she emerged wrapped in a towel, she found clothes laid out on the bed, designer labels in exactly her size. More evidence of Min-ho's obsessive preparation. The jeans fit perfectly. So did the silk blouse. Even the undergarments were correct, which should have creeped her out but instead made her feel seen in a way that was dangerously addictive. She found Min-ho in the kitchen, cooking breakfast in rolled-up sleeves that revealed forearms marked with tattoos she hadn't noticed yesterday. "You cook," she couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. Min-ho glanced over his shoulder, his eyes warming when he saw her. "I do many things that might surprise you." He plated eggs and rice with professional efficiency. "Sit, eat, we need to talk." Jessica sat at the marble island, accepting the plate and chopsticks. About what happens now." Min-ho leaned against the counter across from her, his own breakfast untouched. "You can't go back to the apartment you shared with him. He's already cleaned it out, took anything of value, left your things in boxes in the hallway like garbage." Heat flooded Jessica's face, humiliation and rage warring in her chest. "How do you know that?" "Because I have people watching everything connected to you." His honesty was brutal. "Your ex-fiancé is a coward and a fool, but he's also vindictive. He's already spreading rumors about why he left, painting you as demanding and difficult, trying to salvage his reputation at your expense." Jessica's hands clenched into fists. "Of course he is." Min-ho moved closer, his hand covering hers. "I can make him stop. One word from me and he'll disappear from Seoul entirely, never to bother you again." "No," the word came out sharp. "I don't want you to hurt him. I don't want to owe you that. You don't owe me anything." His thumb stroked her knuckles. "I'm not keeping score, Jessica. I'm protecting what's mine." "I'm not yours," she said, but the words lacked conviction. "Not yet," he agreed, his eyes intense. "But you will be. Give me time to prove it." That afternoon, Min-ho had to leave for business he wouldn't elaborate on, leaving Jessica alone in the penthouse with instructions not to leave and a phone number to call if she needed anything. She spent hours exploring, finding a library filled with books in Korean and English, a gym that looked professional, and a studio space that took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows, north light, empty canvases stacked against the walls, every art supply she could imagine already organized and waiting. He'd made her a studio, in his home, without even asking if she wanted one. Jessica sank onto the window seat, overwhelmed by the gesture, by what it meant. Min-ho had been watching her for 3 months, learning her, preparing for the moment he could make her his. It should have terrified her. Instead, it made her chest ache with something that felt dangerously like longing. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "I hope you like the studio. I wanted you to have a space that was entirely yours." "Min-ho," Jessica's fingers hesitated over the keyboard before typing back. "It's beautiful. Thank you." His response came immediately. "Everything I have is yours now. Get used to it." She shouldn't have smiled, shouldn't have felt warm at his words. But she did, and that terrified her more than anything else. By the time Min-ho returned that evening, Jessica had sketched for hours, losing herself in the familiar comfort of charcoal and paper. She heard the door open, heard his footsteps, felt his presence before she saw him. "You've been working." He appeared in the studio doorway, still in his suit, a cut on his cheekbone she didn't remember from this morning. Jessica set down her charcoal, stood, moved toward him without thinking. "You're hurt, it's nothing." His hand caught hers when she reached for his face. "Just business." "What kind of business leaves you bleeding?" "The dangerous kind." He didn't apologize for it. "This is my world, Jessica. Violence is part of it. If you stay with me, you need to understand that." "I do understand." She traced the cut carefully, her touch feather-light. That doesn't mean I have to like it. Minho's eyes darkened at her touch, his hand coming up to trap hers against his face. You're worried about me. I'm worried you'll get yourself killed and I'll be stuck in your penthouse with a really nice studio and no one to annoy. His laugh was surprised and genuine. Is that all I am to you? Someone to annoy? You're the man who swept me away from my wedding, stalked me for 3 months, and apparently thinks he owns me. Jessica met his eyes, saw the hunger there, the barely controlled need. So yes, annoying you is my new favorite hobby. Minho's control snapped. He pulled her flush against him, his hand tangling in her hair, his mouth claiming hers with a desperation that stole her breath. The kiss was harder than yesterday, more demanding, full of 3 months of wanting and the fear he'd felt that she might refuse him. Jessica kissed him back just as desperately, her hands fisting in his shirt, her body molding to his like she'd been made to fit there. When they finally broke apart, Minho's breathing was ragged. I need to tell you something. She waited, her heart hammering. 3 months ago, I decided you were mine. He brushed hair from her face with shaking hands. But somewhere between then and now, between watching you and learning you and finally having you here, something changed. This isn't just obsession anymore, Jessica. This is love, and I have no idea what to do with it except give you everything I have and hope it's enough. The confession broke something open inside her. Minho, I barely know you. Then let me teach you. His forehead pressed to hers. Let me show you who I am beneath the violence and power. Let me prove I can be the man you deserve. A week passed in a strange domesticity that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. Minho left for business during the day, always coming back with small gifts. Fresh flowers because he'd learned she loved peonies. Art books from shops she'd mentioned wanting to visit. Ingredients for Nigerian dishes because he'd researched her favorite foods and wanted to learn to cook them. Jessica painted and sketched and slowly let herself believe this might be real, that Minho's obsession might actually be love. That maybe, just maybe, she could have something beautiful with a dangerous man. On the 8th day, Minho took her to dinner at an exclusive restaurant in Gangnam, the kind of place that required reservations months in advance and had more staff than tables. Jessica wore a dress he'd made for her, deep emerald that made her skin glow, and she felt beautiful in a way Daniel had never made her feel. Minho couldn't stop looking at her, his hand possessive on her lower back as they were led to a private room. You're starring, she said, settling into her seat. I can't help it. His eyes devoured her. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Jessica flushed, unused to such blatant admiration. You're biased, completely. He reached across the table, took her hand, but that doesn't make it less true. They were halfway through dinner when it happened. A woman approached their table, beautiful and Korean and clearly shocked to see Minho with someone. Minho, her voice was sharp. Who is this? Jessica tensed, recognizing the tone if not the woman. An ex, maybe, or someone who thought she had claimed to him. This is Jessica, Minho said calmly, his hand tightening on Jessica's. My woman. The woman's eyes widened, then narrowed. Your woman? Since when do you have a woman? Since I decided she was mine. Minho's voice carried a warning, and since she agreed to stay. Now if you'll excuse us, we're having dinner. The woman's face flushed with anger. You can't be serious, her. She's not even Korean. She's not even suitable for someone like you. Minho stood slowly, his entire demeanor shifting from relaxed to deadly in a heartbeat. Jessica's breath caught at the transformation, at how quickly he could become something terrifying. Careful, he said softly, the word dripping with menace. You're talking about the woman I love. Choose your next words very carefully. The woman paled, mumbled an apology, and fled. Minho sat back down, his hand finding Jessica's immediately. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Jessica's chest was tight, her eyes burning. You called me the woman you love. I did. His thumb stroked her palm. Because it's true, I love you, Jessica Ade. I've loved you since the moment I saw you, and I'll love you until the day I die. No one gets to disrespect you. Not in front of me, not ever. Jessica stood abruptly, her chair scraping back. I need air. She fled to the bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and let the tears come. Not from the woman's words, but from Minho's response. From the way he defended her so fiercely. From the realization that she was falling for him too. Falling for a dangerous man who loved her with terrifying intensity. When she finally composed herself and returned to the table, Minho stood immediately, his eyes searching her face. Are you all right? No. She sat, met his eyes. I'm not all right because I'm falling in love with you too, and I don't know what to do with that. Minho's expression transformed, something fierce and possessive and triumphant blazing in his eyes. Say it again. I'm falling in love with you. The words were easier the second time. I'm falling in love with you, Kang Minho, and it terrifies me. Good. He pulled her from her chair into his lap, ignoring the staff, ignoring propriety. Be terrified with me, because I'm terrified too. Terrified I'll mess this up. Terrified I'll lose you. Terrified that you'll wake up one day and realize you deserve better than a man with blood on his hands. He cupped her face. But I'm not letting you go, ever. Jessica kissed him, deep and desperate, tasting his promise. Then don't. 2 weeks after the wedding that wasn't, Jessica's life had transformed into something unrecognizable. She painted in Minho's studio during the days, sold 3 pieces through a gallery connection he'd made for her, started building the career she'd abandoned for Daniel. Minho came home every evening, sometimes bleeding, always intense, and they'd have dinner and talk and slowly learn each other in ways that went deeper than obsession. But there were complications. Minho's business was dangerous, involved people who didn't appreciate his sudden distraction. And Jessica's presence in his life had made her a target she didn't fully understand yet. The night everything changed started innocently enough. Minho was later than usual, and Jessica was curled up on the couch reading when her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Jessica Ade. The voice was male, Korean accented, cold. Yes, who is this? Someone who wants to give you a message for Minho. Tell him that taking you was a mistake. Tell him that he should have kept his obsessions private. Tell him that now everyone knows his weakness, and weaknesses can be exploited. The line went dead. Jessica's hands shook as she tried calling Minho, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She was packing, anxiety clawing at her chest, when the door burst open. But it wasn't Minho. 3 men entered, moving with professional efficiency, and Jessica barely had time to scream before they were on her. She fought, remembering self-defense classes from college, managed to knee one in the groin before something struck her head and the world went dark. Jessica woke to pain. Her head throbbed where she'd been hit. Her wrists ached from zip ties binding them behind her back, and her vision swam as she tried to focus. She was in a warehouse, empty except for the chair she was tied to and the men standing around her. Where is he? She demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. Where's Minho? The leader stepped forward, a man in his 50s with cold eyes. That's what we're waiting to find out. You see, Ms. Ade, your boyfriend has something that belongs to us. Territory he took, business he disrupted. We want it back, and you're going to help us get it. I won't help you with anything. The man smiled, pulled out a knife. We'll see about that. That's when the warehouse doors exploded inward, literally exploded, the sound deafening in the empty space. And through the smoke and chaos came Minho, moving like death itself, his men behind him, guns drawn. The effect was immediate. Jessica's captors turned their weapons on Minho, but they never had a chance. Minho moved with brutal efficiency, disarming the first man with a strike that broke bone, shooting the second without hesitation, reaching Jessica before the third could even raise his weapon. The leader tried to use Jessica as a shield, his knife at her throat. Stay back or I kill her. Minho's eyes met Jessica's, saw the fear there, saw the trust beneath it. And then he smiled, cold and certain. No, you won't. The shot was precise, the leader dropping before his knife could break skin. Minho was cutting Jessica's bonds a second later, pulling her into his arms with shaking hands. Are you hurt? Did they touch you? Tell me what they did. I'm okay. Jessica clung to him, her face pressed against his chest. I'm okay, you came. Always. His voice was fierce. I will always come for you. Always. They didn't make it home immediately. Minho had his men secure the scene, had his doctor check Jessica's head injury, had plans made to eliminate the rest of the organization that had taken her. But finally, hours later, they were back in the penthouse, alone and still shaking from adrenaline. I should never have brought you into this, Minho said, packing his bedroom like a caged animal. I should have known keeping you would put you in danger. Jessica sat on his bed, watching him. So what are you saying? That you want me to leave? He spun to face her. No, God no, I'm saying I'm selfish enough to keep you anyway. I'm saying I love you too much to let you go, even knowing what it costs. I'm saying I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure no one ever touches you again. Then stop packing and come here. He crossed to her immediately, sinking to his knees in front of her, his hands framing her face. I thought I lost you today. You didn't. Her hands covered his. I'm here, I'm safe. And I'm not going anywhere, promise me. His voice cracked. Promise me you'll stay, I promise. Jessica pulled him up, pulled him down onto the bed beside her. I love you, Minho. Whatever danger comes with that, I love you. He kissed her then, desperate and claiming, his hands shaking as they tangled in her hair. The kiss deepened, became something more, and Jessica felt the shift between them. Felt the moment they both stopped fighting and gave in to what had been building since the moment they met. Minho pulled back slightly, his breathing ragged. Tell me to stop. Tell me this is too fast. Don't stop, Jessica whispered, her hands pulling him closer. Don't stop, don't leave, don't let me go. I won't. The promise was fierce. Never. What followed was wordless, intense, full of 3 months of wanting and the terror of almost losing each other. Minho loved her with his whole body, worshipped her with hands and mouth, showed her exactly how deeply his obsession ran. And Jessica loved him back just as fiercely, gave him everything she had, proved that choosing him hadn't been a mistake. Afterward, they lay tangled together, breathing hard, the city lights filtering through the windows. Minho's hand traced patterns on her bare shoulder, his touch reverent. Mine, he whispered. Forever. Forever, she agreed and meant it. The morning brought complications. Jessica woke alone, found Minho in his office on the phone, his voice hard and commanding as he gave orders in rapid Korean. When he finally hung up, he looked exhausted. What's wrong? She asked from the doorway. He looked up, his expression softening when he saw her. Come here. She crossed to him, let him pull her into his lap. Everything's wrong. The organization that took you has retaliated, attacked 3 of my businesses, killed 2 of my men. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Then we deal with it, together. Jessica met his eyes. You're not sending me away, Minho. I'm staying. It's too dangerous. I don't care. Her hands cupped his face. You love me. I love you. That means we face the danger together. You're going to be the death of me, he said, but he was smiling. Good, she said and kissed him. The death of you is better than a life without you. The war lasted 3 weeks, brutal and bloody, and exactly what Jessica had been warned about. Minho's world was violence, was power plays and territory disputes and men dying in alleys for the crime of loyalty. But through it all, he kept Jessica safe. Moved her to a different location every night, surrounded her with guards, never let her far from his sight. And slowly, methodically, he dismantled the organization that had dared touch her. It ended in a warehouse across the city, Minho facing the rival boss in a negotiation that was really just a prelude to execution. Jessica watched from a secure location via video feed, her heart in her throat as Minho moved through the space like he owned it. You took something of mine, Minho said, his voice carrying through the warehouse. You put your hands on the woman I love. The rival boss laughed. She's just a woman, she's everything. Minho's gun was suddenly in his hand, and you're dead. The shot echoed through the feed. Jessica flinched but didn't look away. This was who Minho was, what he did to protect what was his. And she loved him anyway, maybe even because of it. When Minho returned hours later, covered in someone else's blood, Jessica was waiting. It's over, he said simply. No more threats, no more danger, you're safe. And you? She asked, crossing to him. Are you safe, always, when I have you? He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. Marry me. The words were muffled but clear. Marry me for real this time, not because some fool abandoned you, but because you choose me, because you love me. Jessica pulled back to look at him. Yes. His eyes blazed. Yes, yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I choose you. Yes, I love you. She kissed him. Yes to everything. 1 month later, they married in a small ceremony with people who actually mattered. Jessica's family flew in from Lagos. Minho's inner circle attended. And when Jessica walked down the aisle in a dress she'd chosen herself, Minho's eyes were wet. This time, she knew with absolute certainty her groom would be waiting. And he was standing at the altar in a perfectly tailored suit, looking at her like she was his entire world. Because she was and he was hers, and together they'd built something beautiful from the wreckage of her worst day. The ceremony was simple. The promises were absolute. And when Minho kissed his bride, it felt like coming home. 6 months later, Jessica stood in their bedroom, a pregnancy test in her shaking hands, 2 pink lines that changed everything. Minho found her there, took one look at her face, and knew. We're pregnant. His voice was odd. We're pregnant, she confirmed, and watched his face transform with joy so pure it took her breath away. He swept her into his arms, spun her carefully, laughed like she'd given him the world. Because she had, and he'd given her one in return. And together they were building a future that started with a failed wedding and ended with forever. The penthouse had transformed over 6 months of marriage into something that felt like home. Jessica's paintings covered the walls, splashes of color against Minho's minimalist aesthetic. Her books crowded his shelves. Her laughter filled spaces that had been silent for years. And now, with her hand pressed against her still flat stomach, she was giving him something he'd never dared hope for: a family. Minho knelt in front of her, his hands covering hers on her abdomen, his forehead pressed against the place where their child grew. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for choosing me, for staying, for giving me this." Jessica's fingers tangled in his hair, holding him close. "You gave me everything first. You saved me from a life that would have destroyed me. You loved me when I didn't know how to love myself. This baby is ours, Minho. Ours to love and protect and raise together." He looked up at her, tears tracking down his face without shame. "I'm going to be a father." The wonder in his voice made her chest ache. "You're going to be an amazing father," she said, pulling him up to kiss him softly. "Our child is so lucky to have you." The pregnancy announcement to their families came the following week. Jessica's mother cried happy tears over video call, already planning to visit for the birth. Minho's inner circle, the men who'd become like brothers, celebrated with champagne and genuine joy. But with the joy came renewed danger. The news that Kang Minho's woman was pregnant spread through Seoul's underground like wildfire, and not everyone was pleased. There were rivals who saw opportunity, enemies who saw weakness, people who thought a pregnant wife would make Minho vulnerable. They were right, but not in the way they expected. Minho didn't become weak. He became absolutely lethal. Anyone who even looked at Jessica wrong disappeared. Business associates who made inappropriate comments found their operations shut down overnight. And the security around Jessica tripled, then tripled again. "I feel like I'm in a cage," Jessica complained one afternoon, watching 2 guards patrol the garden from her studio window. "I can't even go to the market without an armed escort. You're carrying my child." Minho appeared behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, his hands splaying protectively over her stomach. "I'm not taking chances." "I know," she said, leaning back against him. "But Minho, I need to live. I need fresh air and normalcy, and the ability to buy my own groceries without feeling like the president." His arms tightened slightly. "What if I came with you?" "What?" She turned in his embrace. "You want to go grocery shopping with me? I want to do everything with you." His smile was soft, the one he reserved only for her. "Especially the mundane things. Especially the moments that make life worth living." So they went, Minho and Jessica, to a market in Itaewon with guards trailing at a distance. They bought vegetables and fruit, argued about which brand of rice was better, and for an hour they were just a couple expecting their first child. Normal, happy, untouchable until they weren't. The attack came as they were loading groceries into the car. 3 men, guns drawn, moving fast. Jessica didn't even have time to scream before Minho was shoving her behind him, his own weapon appearing from somewhere, his body a shield between her and danger. "Stay down," he commanded, his voice cold and controlled. "Don't move." Gunfire erupted. Jessica crouched behind the car, hands over her stomach, praying desperately for Minho's safety. The fight was brutal and efficient. Minho moved like a dancer, like violence was choreographed, and within minutes all 3 attackers were down. But when he turned back to Jessica, there was blood on his shirt. "You're hurt," she gasped, reaching for him. "It's nothing." He pulled her up, checked her frantically. "Are you okay? The baby? We're fine." Her hands shook as she touched his face. "But you're bleeding. We need to get you to a hospital. Home first." His jaw was set. "Then we deal with whoever sent them." The bullet had grazed his ribs, painful but not life-threatening. Minho's private doctor stitched him up in the penthouse while Jessica paced, fury and fear warring in her chest. "This has to stop," she said when the doctor finally left. "This constant danger, these attacks. I can't raise our child in a war zone, Minho. Then I'll end the war." His voice was absolute. "Permanently. What does that mean?" "It means I'm going to consolidate power. Eliminate anyone who might threaten you or our child. It means things are going to get very bloody for a while, but when it's over, you'll be safe. Our baby will be safe. That's all that matters." Jessica knelt in front of him, careful of his injury. "I don't want you dying for us. I don't want our child growing up without a father because you were too busy protecting us. I won't die." His hand cupped her face. "I have too much to live for now, but I will do whatever it takes to make sure you both survive. Even if that means becoming more of a monster than I already am. You're not a monster." She kissed him softly. You're a man who loves fiercely. There's a difference. The next morning, Min-ho called a meeting of every major player in Seoul's underground. Neutral ground, witnesses, the kind of gathering that only happened when war was about to be declared or ended. Jessica wanted to go with him, but he refused. Stay here. His hands were gentle but firm. Stay safe. Let me handle this my way. Promise me you'll come back. She held his face. Promise me. I promise. He kissed her deeply. I'll always come back to you. The meeting lasted 6 hours. Jessica spent every minute on edge, packing the penthouse, one hand on her stomach, praying to a god she'd stopped believing in years ago. When Min-ho finally returned, he looked exhausted but triumphant. It's done. He pulled her into his arms. Every organization in Seoul has agreed to a truce. You and our child are untouchable now, officially. Anyone who breaks the agreement faces unified retaliation. How did you manage that? I gave them something they wanted more than revenge. He smiled against her hair. I gave them my word that I'd step back from active operations, become more legitimate, less involved in the violence. What? Jessica pulled back to stare at him. You're leaving the business. Not leaving, transitioning. His hands moved to her stomach. I have priorities now that matter more than power. I have a wife I love, a child on the way, a future I actually want to see. I can't do that if I'm constantly at war. Jessica's eyes burned with tears. You'd give up everything for us. I'd give up the world for you, he said simply. Don't you know that by now? She kissed him then, deep and grateful and full of love that felt too big for her chest. Later that night, curled together in bed, Min-ho's hand resting on her growing belly, Jessica finally felt safe. The war was over. The danger had passed. And they could focus on building the life they'd both fought so hard for. Our baby moved today, Jessica said softly. Just a flutter, but I felt it. Min-ho's hand pressed more firmly against her stomach, his expression odd. Really? Really. She covered his hand with hers. In about 4 months, we're going to be parents. Terrifying, but amazing. His eyes met hers. Thank you for this. For choosing me even when it was dangerous. For loving me even when I didn't deserve it. For giving me a reason to be better. You've always been better than you believed, she said. You just needed someone to see it. The pregnancy progressed smoothly despite the chaos of their lives. Jessica's body changed, her stomach rounding, her skin glowing, and Min-ho became increasingly protective and adorably helpless. He read every parenting book he could find. He interviewed pediatricians like they were applying for national security positions. He had the nursery designed and redesigned 3 times before Jessica finally took over and made decisions herself. You're going to drive yourself insane, she told him, watching him debate paint colors with an intensity usually reserved for business negotiations. I just want everything perfect. His hand ran through his hair in frustration. Our child deserves perfect. Our child deserves parents who love them and each other. Jessica pulled him down beside her on the couch. The paint color doesn't matter, Min-ho. What matters is that we're together, that we're ready. And we will be. He relaxed against her, his hand finding her stomach automatically. You're right, I'm being ridiculous. You're being a nervous first-time father. She kissed his temple. It's actually adorable. I'm not adorable. I'm terrifying, you're both. And I love you for it. At 7 months pregnant, Jessica's body was beautiful and uncomfortable in equal measure. Her back ached constantly. Her feet swelled. She couldn't sleep comfortably in any position. And Min-ho became her devoted servant, massaging her back, rubbing her feet, staying up with her during the long, sleepless nights. One evening, sitting on the terrace watching the sunset, Jessica felt a sharp pain low in her abdomen. Min-ho noticed immediately. What's wrong? Just a cramp. She breathed through it. The doctor said this is normal. If it happens again, we're going to the hospital. His jaw was set. I'm not taking chances. It happened again an hour later, stronger this time, and again 30 minutes after that. By the time Jessica admitted they might need medical attention, the contractions were regular and intense. It's too early, she gasped as Min-ho carried her to the car. The baby isn't due for 2 more months. You're going to be fine. His voice was steady despite the fear in his eyes. Both of you are going to be fine. The hospital was prepared for their arrival, Min-ho's money and influence ensuring immediate attention from the best doctors. But money couldn't stop preterm labor, couldn't guarantee safety, couldn't control what happened next. We need to do an emergency C-section, the doctor said after examining Jessica. The baby is in distress. We can't wait. Min-ho's hand tightened on Jessica's. Do whatever you need to do. Just save them, both of them. Everything after that was chaos and terror and bright lights. Jessica was wheeled into surgery, Minho beside her in scrubs, his hand gripping hers like an anchor. She was scared, more scared than she'd been facing kidnappers or danger or any of the violence in Minho's world. This was her child, their child, and something was wrong. "I'm here," Minho kept saying, his voice steady despite his fear. "I'm right here. You're not alone." The moment their daughter entered the world, too small and too early, crying weakly, Jessica's heart stopped. The medical team moved with practiced efficiency, taking the baby to assess her, leaving Jessica and Minho in terrified limbo. "Is she okay?" Jessica's voice was hoarse. "Is our baby okay?" The doctor turned and Jessica saw the smile beneath the mask. "She's small, but she's fighting. Strong lungs, good color. She's going to need monitoring, but I think she'll be just fine." Minho's head dropped to Jessica's shoulder, his body shaking with relief. They brought their daughter over briefly, just long enough for Jessica to see her tiny face, her perfect fingers, before taking her to the NICU. "She's beautiful," Jessica whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She looks just like you. She has your strength." Minho kissed her forehead. "You did amazing. You gave me everything." The next 3 weeks were the hardest of their lives. Their daughter, whom they named Amara, meaning grace in Igbo, stayed in the NICU, gaining weight slowly, fighting to thrive. Jessica and Minho barely left the hospital, taking turns sitting beside her incubator, talking to her, willing her to grow stronger. Minho read to her from his phone, business reports and news articles, and eventually children's books when Jessica pointed out their daughter might prefer actual stories. He sang to her in Korean, old lullabies his own mother had sung before she died. And he made promises. "I'm going to give you the world," he told Amara, his finger carefully stroking her tiny hand. "You and your mother are my everything. You're going to grow up safe and loved, and you're never going to doubt your worth. I swear it." Jessica watched him from the doorway, her heart so full it ached. He was going to be an incredible father. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the doctors cleared Amara to go home. She was still small, still needed careful monitoring, but she was healthy and strong and ready to leave the hospital. Minho carried her out like she was made of glass, Jessica beside him, both of them exhausted and terrified and absolutely in love. Bringing Amara home transformed everything. The penthouse that had been a bachelor pad became a home. The man who'd been Seoul's most dangerous criminal became a father who changed diapers and paced the floors at 3 a.m. and sang lullabies off-key. And Jessica, who'd once stood at an altar alone and humiliated, found herself part of a family she'd never imagined possible. One evening, when Amara was 2 months old and finally sleeping through the night, Minho found Jessica in the nursery, watching their daughter sleep. "What are you thinking about?" He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "I'm thinking about how different my life could have been." She leaned back against him. "If Daniel had shown up to that wedding, if you hadn't been there, I'd be married to the wrong man, living the wrong life, missing all of this. Fate brought you to me." His lips brushed her temple. "Everything else was just noise. Do you believe in fate?" She turned in his arms. "I believe in choice. I believe you chose me when you could have walked away. I believe I chose you when every logical thought said I shouldn't. I believe we chose each other and built something beautiful from the wreckage. Then I believe in that too." He kissed her softly. "Thank you for choosing me, Jessica, for giving me a family, for making me want to be more than I was. You've always been more." She touched his face. "You just needed someone to believe in you." 6 months later, with Amara growing and thriving, Minho took Jessica back to the church where it all began. The same church, the same altar, but this time for renewal vows they chose together. "I wanted to replace your worst memory with your best," he explained, standing where he'd first claimed her. "I wanted you to stand in this spot and remember love instead of abandonment." Jessica's eyes burned with tears. "You've already given me more than I dreamed possible. Then let me give you one more thing." He got down on one knee, even though they were already married, even though she was already his. "Let me give you forever properly this time, with vows we both chose, with promises we both mean." "Jessica, will you marry me again?" "Yes," she whispered, pulling him up to kiss him. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They renewed their vows with Amara in attendance, their families present, their love absolute. And when the priest pronounced them husband and wife again, Minho kissed Jessica like it was the first time and the last time and every time in between. Later, at home with Amara sleeping peacefully in her crib, Minho and Jessica stood on their terrace watching Seoul sparkle below. "A year ago, I was standing at an altar being humiliated." Jessica's voice was soft. "And look at us now." Minho pulled her closer. A year ago, I was a man who knew only violence and power. And then you walked into my life and taught me how to be human again. We saved each other. She turned in his arms. We chose each other. And we're going to keep choosing each other every day for the rest of our lives. Forever, he agreed, kissing her. For always. The next morning brought new beginnings. Minho had officially transitioned to legitimate business, using his connections and wealth to build an empire that didn't require bloodshed. Jessica's art career flourished, her paintings in galleries across Seoul and beyond, her reputation growing. And Amara, their miracle baby, grew into a happy, healthy child who had her mother's beauty and her father's intensity. 2 years after that altar moment, Jessica stood in the same church again, this time for Amara's dedication ceremony. She watched Minho hold their daughter with infinite gentleness, watched him promise to love and protect her always, and her heart was so full it almost hurt. After the ceremony, as they prepared to leave, Minho stopped her at the altar. "Remember standing here? How could I forget?" She smiled. "You swept in like you owned the world and claimed me in front of everyone. I did own the world." His eyes were warm, "But I gave it all up for you. Best trade I ever made." "Best choice we ever made," she corrected. "Together, always together." They left the church hand in hand, Amara between them, and Jessica realized that fairy tales didn't always start with once upon a time. Sometimes they started with a failed wedding and a dangerous man, and a choice to love against all logic. Sometimes they started with abandonment and ended with forever. Sometimes they started with pain and ended with joy so profound it made everything that came before worth it. 3 years after Minho claimed her, Jessica published a book about their love story. Names changed, but truth intact. It became a bestseller, women across Korea and beyond drawn to the tale of finding love in the wreckage. One reader asked during a book signing, "How did you know he was worth the risk? How did you know choosing him wouldn't destroy you?" Jessica thought about that question, about standing at the altar alone, about Minho appearing like salvation, about every moment since. "I didn't know," she answered honestly. "I just knew that a safe life without him felt like dying slowly, and a dangerous life with him felt like finally living. That's how I knew. Sometimes the right choice is the scary one. Sometimes love requires walking toward the fire instead of away from it. And sometimes the man who saves you is the one everyone warned you about." Minho appeared at her side then, Amara in his arms, their second daughter growing in Jessica's belly. "Ready to go home?" he asked. "Always," she said, taking his free hand. "Home with you is the only place I want to be." They left together, a family built from chaos and choice and love that defied every rule. And behind them, in the church where it all began, the altar stood witness to a truth Jessica had learned. That sometimes God answered prayers in ways you didn't expect. That sometimes salvation came wearing a dark suit and a dangerous smile. That sometimes the man who swept you away from your wedding was exactly the man you were supposed to marry all along. 5 years after that altar moment, Minho and Jessica renewed their vows again, this time with 2 daughters as flower girls and Jessica 6 months pregnant with their son. 10 years later, they stood at the same altar with 3 children and a love that had only deepened. And every time Jessica walked into that church, she remembered being abandoned. She remembered humiliation and pain. But mostly, she remembered the moment Minho appeared and said, "Then she's mine." Because those 3 words changed everything. Those 3 words led to this, to a family built on choices and chances and love that refused to be anything less than absolute. Years later, when their oldest daughter asked how Mama and Papa met, Jessica would tell her the truth, that Mama was having the worst day of her life, that another man left her standing alone, that Papa appeared and decided Mama was worth fighting for, and Papa, pulling Jessica close, would add his part, that he saw Mama and knew immediately she was meant to be his, that he claimed her in front of everyone because he refused to let her walk away, that choosing her was the easiest and best decision of his life. Then they'd look at each other, these 2 people who'd found love in the wreckage, and their eyes would say what words couldn't. That fate and choice were sometimes the same thing, that the scariest decisions often led to the most beautiful destinations, that love wasn't always safe or simple or easy, but it was always worth it. And their children, watching their parents still completely in love decades later, would understand something profound. That the best love stories didn't start with perfection. They started with broken people choosing to be whole together. They started with someone being brave enough to claim what they wanted. They started with another person being brave enough to stay. Jessica's story started with abandonment at an altar, but it ended with a family, a marriage built on obsessive devotion and fierce love, and a future so bright it made her past pain feel like a distant memory. Because Kang Min-ho had walked into her worst moment and declared her his. And Jessica Ade had chosen to believe him. And together, they'd built something beautiful from wreckage, created forever from ruin, and proved that sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the most right one. On their 20th anniversary, standing in their home surrounded by children and grandchildren, Min-ho pulled Jessica close. "Still mine," he murmured against her hair. "Always yours," she confirmed. "Best decision I ever made." And it was. Choosing him had been insane and reckless and completely illogical. But it had also been the most right thing she'd ever done. Because some loves aren't meant to be safe. Some loves are meant to be consuming and all-encompassing and absolutely transformative. Some loves start with a mafia boss claiming a jilted bride and saying 3 words that change everything. "Then she's mine." And some loves last forever, built on those 3 words, sustained by choice and passion and the absolute certainty that they'd found exactly what they needed in each other. Jessica had gone to a church expecting one future and left with an entirely different one. She'd been claimed by a dangerous man and chosen to stay. And every day since, she'd chosen him again. Just as he chose her obsessively, completely, with a devotion that never wavered. That was their love story. Unconventional, intense, born from catastrophe and built through chaos. But also beautiful, true, and absolutely eternal. And when people asked Jessica if she ever regretted the day her first wedding fell apart, she'd smile and say no. Because that day led to everything. That day led to Min-ho. And Min-ho led to home, to family, to forever. To a love that started with abandonment and ended with absolute devotion. To a life she never could have imagined, but couldn't imagine living without. That was the power of choosing the dangerous path. Of saying yes when logic screamed no. Of believing that sometimes the man who claims you is exactly the man you were meant to find. Jessica Ade had been abandoned at an altar, and Kang Min-ho had decided that made her his. And somehow, impossibly, perfectly, that had been exactly right. The end of one story, the beginning of forever. The proof that sometimes love doesn't ask permission. It just claims what it wants and refuses to let go. And if you're very lucky, what love claims is exactly what you needed all along. If you enjoyed Jessica and Min-ho's story of obsessive love born from catastrophe, please like this video, share it with someone who loves intense romance, and subscribe to K-fairytales stories for more dark, addictive love stories where powerful men fall completely for the women who change their worlds. Drop a comment telling us what you loved most about their journey, and we'll see you in the next story, besties.